Welcome to the Pelican Debrief podcast, your podcast debriefing. I am your host, Chris Barnewall, and with me today is not Matt Cianfrone, but Rick Stone of Pelican Debrief. Rick, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. UCF plays later today, and I am excited for that. But before I can enjoy college football, I need to get some NBA basketball out of the way, specifically Pelicans NBA basketball.
Amen. It's going to be an interesting game tonight.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But before we get to Pelicans talk, did you see that Grizzlies-Kings game last night?
I did. I didn't see all of it, but I caught the third and fourth quarter. Man, that's interesting.
For those who missed it, the Kings went out to a 26-point lead. Yes, that's right, 26 points. And then they blew it. They kind of had a 20-point lead throughout the game. It was somewhere in the teens later on. It wasn't until the fourth quarter where they blew the whole thing away. They blew away the entire lead. It reaches the tie game status. Kings fans are going nuts because this is their second big blown lead in a row. They blew their lead against the Mavericks not that long ago. I think it was about 2 nights ago. And so Kings fans are going nuts. Grizzlies fans are excited. The Kings are actually down 2. DeMarcus Cousins goes DeMarcus Cousins boogie for America on everyone and scores 2 points. They're up 2, and so the Grizzlies have – wait, no, I'm sorry. They're not up 2. They tied a game. So the Grizzlies have a chance to win the game or it's going into overtime. They have 0.3 seconds left. Rick, what happened?
Well, what happened was a blown assignment. Courtney Lee got right to the rim on the same design play as when he was in Orlando, and he blew the shot. He blew the shot versus the Lakers that had all Orlando fans freaking out. This time he actually makes it. I couldn't understand this watching this game. You have one job. There's only 0.3 seconds. The one job you do is don't let them go to the rim. That's it. Don't let them go to the rim, ever. And what do? You let them go right directly under the rim.
Wide open to the rim.
He couldn't be any closer to the rim if he wanted to be.
So while that was going on, the Kings were fairly sure they had won anyways because they think they tipped the ball on the pass in. Specifically, Ryan Hollins, who was guarding the pass, it did look like he might have gotten the ball, and honestly, I think he did tip it. But if you don't want to put that in the ref's hands ever, because the best evidence I've seen today is a really grainy picture of what looks like his hand touching the ball, but you can't tell. And really, if rather than focusing on that, the Kings should have just stopped him. Don't let Courtney Lee near the rim that open.
It's just making excuses. Maybe he tipped it, maybe he didn't. But that was a wide open look anyway. He was open. You got to guard that. You can't let it be decided by the refs saying, oh, he tipped the ball. You just got to stop the play. The other thing is they're saying, oh, the clock didn't start in time. Just defend the play. Just do what you're paid to do, Jason Thompson. Just do what you're paid to do and defend the rim. I understand they want to win the game, but you just missed your assignment. Game over. It was really interesting because when the Kings went to their bench unit to try, when they were up 26 and they're like, all right, we got this, and their bench could not stop the Grizzlies who couldn't score the ball throughout the entire game, and they couldn't score the ball. Raymond Sessions, I believe it was shooting terribly, and he took 10 shots in a row. It was a mess. I don't know how they blew it, but they blew it.
They blew it because that bench is just atrocious. The Kings have one of the worst benches in the NBA, in my opinion. Just no... and plus, they're a young team who's never been in this situation of actually winning games before. They have no idea how to close out a game. You see that with a lot of young teams who aren't used to winning games. They get these big leads, then they blow them, or they don't look like they know how to play with that lead. And the Kings are one of those teams.
Yeah, the Kings are really, especially on their bench, when your best bench player is Nick Stauskas, it's not really a good thing. And they don't have anyone on that bench that you would trust defending anyone. So not only are they not scoring the ball, they're giving up wide open shots. They're not stopping anyone. It's a mess. Their starting unit has been playing fantastic this year. I think Darren Collison, everyone wanted to trash him, but he's playing really, really well. It's just that bench can't do anything to help their starting unit.
And you need a good bench if you're going to be a playoff team, especially out there in the West.
Yeah, you got to have somebody who's able to give your guys rest and come out and still play good ball. When you have so many deep teams, Dallas can go 9, 10 deep some nights. You can't have just trusting your starting unit.
Speaking of Dallas going 9-10 deep, did you see what happened last night with the Sixers?
Man, Philly's bad. Philly is really, really, really bad. And I don't know if it's just the coach going, we're not even going to try and win. Just go play street ball.
No,
But
the best actually was with the coach. The best moment of the night was apparently no one had a vine of this. Michael Carter-Williams didn't run back on defense, and Brett Brown yelled at him to run back on defense, to which Michael Carter-Williams did nothing but point at the scoreboard.
Yeah. Like, coach, really? We gonna play this game right now? I'm the best player on this roster, and you're telling me to hustle back when we're down, I don't know, 50? I'm not hustling back.
I really hope he yelled scoreboard, too.
He didn't even go back to the huddle. If he didn't just sit in the middle of the court and start, like, smoking a cigarette or something, waiting for the game to come back.
I really hope he yelled scoreboard like as he's pointing at it.
Oh man, that's got to be a mess of a locker room. I don't even want to imagine what they were saying after the game.
The locker room has to be expecting this, so I don't think it's a mess. But they probably were. I wouldn't want to be media in that locker room. Just that would not be a fun atmosphere at all.
I remember being in I think it was like modified basketball, and we went 1-18. I don't care if you're expecting to go 1-18. It's miserable in the locker room when you get beaten by 50 points. And I know this feeling. It's not fun. Everyone's blaming everyone. Everyone's mad. People are throwing things. It's not fun. Just keep the fire extinguishers out of the locker room from now on.
Thank God Amari's not on that team.
Oh, God, he should be. That should be the trade they make. Get Amari and just create the most awesome locker room situation imaginable.
Another game that happened last night was the Raptors and Bulls game, where the Raptors kept that close for a long time, and then the Bulls they found an offense.
This is my problem with the Raptors. They don't have anybody who can guard the paint. Jonas Valanciunas can kind of guard the centers, but not really effectively. But Pau Gasol dominated that game. He got whatever he wanted, where he wanted, dominated the boards, could make every shot, and the Raptors don't have a single person they can put on him. Their best defender is Tyler Hansborough at the power forward. It's not going to cut it when you're playing Pau Gasol and Kevin Love.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of the really good big men in the NBA they don't eat them. Like the Raptors put up a fight. It's not like it's the easiest score ever against the Raptors inside, but guys like Nick Vucevic they torch them.
Yeah, they have field day because they'll just back them down, and the Raptors don't do anything. They don't have the strength in their power forwards to keep them from backing them down. They're a stretch team. They like on offense to stretch four out and use Valanciunas inside, but the downside of that is your power forward is going to get abused on the defensive end.
And they're still a really young team, and they don't really know how to combat some of those more veteran-savvy teams like the Bulls. Like we saw that last year with the Nets, that experience of how to play. Like even when you have the better team in general, other teams just kind of know how to play better.
Yeah. I mean, when pressure comes on, it's a whole different situation, especially when you got a young team with guys who haven't been there before. I mean, Terrence Ross is starting now. He's not prepared to playoff game. And you saw that last year. He struggled a lot in that series. But they've got a deep
better though as the year goes on, right?
Yeah, I mean, people get more experience and they're going to get better in those situations, but it's going to take time.
Speaking of teams that it's going to take a long time, a long time, how about your Los Angeles Lakers?
That might have been one of my favorite games to watch Wednesday. That was really, really fun. I'm really happy that I got to watch that game. Other than Kobe getting whatever he wanted on Eric Gordon, the Lakers were the Lakers, and it was really, really fun.
That was just... I actually wasn't watching that game because I knew you had the recap, and I think I had to watch like a Hornets game or something. I don't remember the details.
Oh, man, the Hornets.
But I remember you were talking about the game, and lots of Pelicans fans were just really angry for some reason, and I couldn't really figure out why they were so mad. And then I saw that it was a close game in like the middle of the third quarter, right?
Yep. There was two things specifically that happened that really made me angry. The first is the obvious. Eric Gordon couldn't stop Kobe Bryant, and he kept missing the easiest shots I've ever seen in the world. He was wide open. Kobe's like, I don't even have to guard him. And then he took shots, and Kobe's like, that's why I don't have to guard him. And I actually got a lot of flack when I wrote my recap from somebody because I gave Alexei Ajinka an F. Now, the reason I gave Alexei Ajinka an F was Carlos Boozer scored 10 straight points on him. Carlos Boozer got everything he wanted on him. It wasn't even a challenge. I mean, you can't let Carlos Boozer dominate you. You just can't.
Yeah, I saw a lot of criticism for Monty Williams when he was playing Ajinka over guys like Ryan Anderson.
Yeah, I don't understand what's up with Ajinka. I don't understand why he's in the game with guys like Ryan Anderson. That doesn't make sense to me.
The Monty Williams experience, everyone.
Oh, man, I'm always really high on Monty. I've liked his chemistry with the team. I think guys like Rhino and Anthony Davis get along really, really well. He's a good chemistry coach. The problem is he's not really a great coach. He makes all these weird decisions with the rotations. Sometimes the out of timeout plays just look completely out of a mess. They get 5-second calls trying to inbound the ball. He's not preparing his team. He's good with the players, but he's not good at getting them to do what he wants on the court.
Yeah, like Luke Babbitt played 16 minutes. Ryan Anderson played 20. Like maybe he was giving Rhino a blow because he was tired or something, but that just feels a little ridiculous.
Luke Babbitt, I know 5 of those minutes were at the end of the game, but he did play him 11 minutes.
It did get crazy at the end. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and the other thing was Luke Babbitt was in there. I think it was to relieve Eric Gordon. He had him playing shooting guard for a little bit, and I didn't understand that. I don't really get why Luke Babbitt is out on the floor in the first place. I know he's injured, and you want to bring him back, and you want to see what he can do. But other than making 1-3, he didn't do anything on offense, and he didn't stop anything on defense. He was just kind of there.
I thought it was weird that Jimmer did not play, and Babbitt got the 16-minute. Like, if you need a guy to give Eric Gordon some relief, why not Jimmer?
My belief was that the Lakers' best scorers are at the shooting guard, and he knows that Jimmer.
I really hope he didn't put him out there for defense, because.
Well, that was the thing. I think he put Luke Babbitt out there because he thinks he's a better defender than Jimmer, and he was worried that when Jimmer was on the floor, the shooting guards were just going to light him up. I don't agree with that decision.
Babbitt wasn't going to get lit up either.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's too high on Babbitt. Babbitt's going to get lit up either way. He's just coming off an injury, and he's nowhere near where good, I guess.
I don't know why he's not throwing Drew Holiday on him, on Kobe.
That was what I thought, but he had Drew Holiday hounding Jeremy Lin the whole game, and he was worried about Jeremy Lin apparently, really bad, and I don't know why.
I'm high on Jeremy Lin. I really like Jeremy Lin as a player, but like the Lakers' offense is highly dependent on high-volume Kobe.
Yeah, they have to have Kobe on all cylinders. They don't really have another guy who can score consistently. They were dependent on Wesley Johnson when we were doubling Kobe, and I'll take it. I'm not really worried about Wesley Johnson going for a big game. But when they just single-covered Kobe with Eric Gordon, it was every bit of worry about Eric Gordon that every Pelicans fan has had. Oof.
So all those criticisms aside, the Pelicans still did blow out the Lakers at the end there.
Yeah, they got the win. And even though it was really shaky at the end, they got the W, and that's what matters.
All right, moving on. There was 2 other big games that happened before that Lakers game. There was the Spurs and the Cavs game. Let's start off with the Spurs game, where they actually won. When I was with Matt last week, I predicted that they would go 0-2 in these 2 games because I thought that both of those were just really good teams. I didn't think the Pelicans were up to that level yet, and I was proven wrong. I mean, it's just the regular season, so it doesn't really matter all that much, but a win against a really good team like this, that's huge for the Pelicans. That's absolutely huge.
It's definitely huge, and this was the key game of why the Pelicans traded for Omer Asik, because the Spurs do a really good job of getting on the offensive rebounds, and they couldn't do anything. Asik was holding down sometimes Tim Duncan. I think it was guarding Diaw for a little bit, and he made sure he got the boards. That was his job, and he did a good job at that because the Spurs couldn't hit the broadside of a barn to start this game. Really struggling all ends trying to get their offense going. Part of it was they were trying to bring guys back from injury. They're trying to readjust that lineup, and that caused problems early. I just think the Pelicans handled it really well. They did exactly what their game plan was to start the game, and that's why they got to a big lead. That's why they were able to keep up with them, and in the end, it's why they won.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have very many nights where Kawhi Leonard's going 5 for 13 and Tim Duncan's going 3 for 10. Even when you have a guy like Omer Sheik defending the rim, just those are two guys that they get their points and they get their stats. Like, even though Kawhi shot horribly, he still had 14 rebounds, and obviously he was impacting the game in other ways like that. Tim Duncan, he had 10 rebounds himself. He's impacting the game wherever he can. Just they held them to scoring, but like we saw there, they're still putting up their numbers that they're going to put up because they're really good.
I mean, when you play players like that, they're going to get their stats somewhere. They're going to affect the game. I mean, Tyreek couldn't keep Kawhi off the boards as much as Omer and Anthony were trying to do. Kawhi's just too big for Tyreek to take. He can stop him from making shots, but he can't keep him from effort. Plays like that. It was an interesting game to watch, especially at the end, because they had a 10-point lead late and they almost blew it. They came very, very close to losing it. Anthony Davis saved him with a late layup, and then I say they got kind of lucky at the end. Kawhi had 2 open looks. He really should have won the game, but it was just that kind of night. He wasn't making anything, and the Pelicans walked away with a victory.
Yeah, it was like they had that. I remember I threw the game on late, and when I threw it on, I remember I saw they were up 10. I was like, oh, wow, they're going to beat the Spurs. This is incredible. And then I saw the lead dwindling. I was like, well, that's because it's the Spurs and they're the Pelicans.
Yep.
Like, honestly, you could argue they should have lost that game. They really certainly tried to lose that game, but this is where Anthony Davis comes through. Like, he's kind of reaching that superstar status of they gave him the ball, they got out of his way, and he scored the bucket. Like, I'm all for the design play at the end, but I mean, superstar hero ball is where it's at in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, your idea is to have Drew Holiday backdoor. There's a great chance he gets blocked the way the Spurs play defense. Anthony Davis made the right decision to take the ball. It's his time. When the Spurs scored to take the lead, he told Coach, I'm winning this game. And he won the game for him. And he is reaching that level where you've really got to take him seriously as one of the better players in the league. I mean, I'm not sure he's the best. I'm not sure he's in the top 2 or 3, but he's up there. He's definitely in the conversation.
So what do you think of the impact of the Spurs win in general? Like, I thought it was really important for them to get a win like this. Like, for the Spurs, it doesn't matter. It's a loss in November. It's not a big deal at all. And overall, at the end of the season, this game won't matter. But I thought it was really big for them because it shows they can beat those really good teams. There's a lot of teams out there who they can compete on a nightly basis, but they can't beat the great teams. Beating the Spurs was huge for the Pelicans in that sense that this is proof to them as a team that they can beat someone like that. They can go on the road and beat a really good Spurs team.
I mean, they've struggled versus the Spurs in recent history. They've had very little success against the dominance of Greg Popovich. So to be able to get a win this early in a year with high expectations is huge. Another thing is they held on, and they're going to have games like this. We've seen them play where they start out with this good lead, and they kind of dwindles, and last shot situations, they haven't had a lot of them early in this year. But the first one, they win. They get Anthony Davis the ball, they're able to execute at the end, and they're able to hold off a game-winning basket. I mean, it's a big win because of who they beat, but it's also a big win because they were able to handle adversity. They were able to take losing a 10-point lead and still able to walk away with the W in a game that a lot of other young teams might not be able to finish.
Although there does have to be some criticism with that blown lead because it did not come against the Tim Duncans and the Kawhi Leonards. It came to a mostly bench unit.
Yeah. I mean, Greg Popovich, you could say he threw in the white flag, but you can also just say he trusted his bench unit. He might have just looked at that and said, look, my starters are not playing good. I know my bench is good, and I know they can play. Let's give them a shot. And they went out there and almost won the game for him. New Orleans didn't really have an answer. And against a bench unit of any team, your starting unit has to play better. They have to be able to hold them off. It's a little concerning. I wonder if in that game especially Monty Williams played his starters a little too long and maybe they got a little weary at the end. They get them a little tired, and when he brought in the fresher unit, it was much tougher for them to keep up. So there's definitely criticism to be thrown around. I'm not really sure who you throw it around. Maybe Monty, maybe just bad defense as a team overall, but it's definitely there. You almost blew a 10-point lead against the team that was a signature win. So
I'm glad you mentioned defense because when you move on to their next game that they played, the Cleveland Cavaliers, like a couple nights later, the defense was it was atrocious. It was bad. It was
it was
embarrassing.
interesting because the first half, they beat the Cavs. They really handed it to them. This is a team that's really trying to figure themselves out, and they beat them. Ryan Anderson, sure, he shot the lights out, but it wasn't just Ryan Anderson. Anthony Davis was still as solid as he was. Ashik was playing really well versus Anderson Varejao. Kyrie hadn't been going yet. I mean, Drew had really stopped him pretty well, and the bench unit was keeping the lead. Austin Rivers was playing fantastic. You saw some really good effort from the other guys. Once that third quarter hit, Cleveland decided they were going to run him out of the building. They were just going to press. When they got the ball, run down the floor and score. And New Orleans didn't have an answer for it. And I really blame that on the defense of Drew and Eric. They didn't really stop Kyrie in the fast break. It's hard to stop LeBron. I'm not really going to blame Tyreek for not being able to hold LeBron when he's a Mack truck coming at you. But they could have played a lot better transition defense in a game that if they had capitalized on that game, beat the Cavs and the Spurs, now we're really talking. But they missed an opportunity. It's not a loss that's going to kill them this year. It's not a loss you say, well, that's a big problem. But it's a missed opportunity and a chance they're really not going to get.
Well, we were talking about how big the Spurs win was. Just imagine if they beaten the Cavs too. Like, sure, the Cavs are still figuring out some problems, but 2 wins against against two teams that are expected to be finals contenders this year. I mean, just that's insane. That would have been huge. It would have been like, how good are the Pelicans really? I mean, we're going to be discussing that later on, but it would have been a legitimate question: is that how good this team is? Are they Are they actual playoff contenders, or are we underselling them? Are we overreacting to their bad defense? Like, what is it? But
yeah,
no, because then Kyrie Irving and LeBron went ultra scoring mode, and it was done.
I mean, Kyrie and LeBron did what they're paid to do. They dominated the game and they took it over. That's good for them. But it's interesting with this Pelicans team when you talk about where are they, how good could they have been, how much we've been talking if they had beaten the Cavs. That changes the locker room. That gets the players in the locker room believing in this team. They really think they can do something. If they're taking down the Spurs and the Cavs in a matter of 3 days, that really gets your team pumped up. That gets everyone believing that you can do it. And I'm not saying they don't believe it, but that really changes the whole aspect of the season, going from let's just make the playoffs to maybe we can really do something this year.
I completely agree with all of that. And sorry, I'm just looking at the box score here, and wow, the big threes make a difference. LeBron had 32, Kevin Love had 22, Kyrie had 32. Let's play guess it. Do you have the box score open? Please say you don't.
Yeah, I can get it open.
No, don't have it open. I want to ask you.
Oh, okay.
Who had the fourth highest scoring, and how much did he score?
For the Cavs?
Yeah.
This is tricky. Dellavedova didn't play. They like to use Mike Miller. I want to say Anderson Varejao had like 8.
You were right. It was Varejao, and he had 12.
Oh, that was my second guess, too.
Everyone else, the highest scoring was Tristan Thompson with 6.
Well, that was actually the big igniter for their run, was Thompson came in the third quarter along with Varejao, and he dominated. I want to say Ryan Anderson he was guarding. Ryan couldn't stop him, and that kind of sparked the run. But, yeah, they really rely on their big three almost as much as Miami does. And their bench is probably one of the reasons they're 3-3. I mean, LeBron hasn't started out well. Kyrie hasn't started out well. But when you're a title-contending team, they had guys like Mario Chalmers who could come off for a big game. Norris Cole could get them back going. The Cavs don't have anybody. They don't have anybody on their bench that can go, all right, we're struggling. We need you to help us get in this game. I mean, they need somebody. It can't be Matt Dellavedova. I'm sorry. I like the name. I like the kid. I like his story. He can't be that guy.
They could have always had Deion Waiters be that guy, but I'm not sure I agree. That's the bench is the reason they've been struggling, because the bench is what the bench is going to be. I've always thought they've had more problems with just kind of getting their offense in general going, like the lack of assists, just the lack of scoring in general. Like, I think part of the reason they were able to beat the Pelicans is because the Pelicans' perimeter defense is really bad. Like, they have Anthony Davis and Omer Sheik defending the rim, but except for Drew Holiday, the Pelicans' perimeter defense is Swiss cheese. Like, we've seen that all season, and it allowed perimeter players like Kyrie and LeBron to just completely destroy them.
Yeah,
They both scored 32 points.
Yeah, they had their day against the perimeter defense in New Orleans, and that's their problem. Another reason the Cavs struggle, of course, is just developing a new team. You have two new superstars in your team. You've got a whole new system, a whole new coach. That's going to struggle. But when you're in that game, you got to take advantage. You got to be able to just lock down and win a game like that. And especially with the perimeter guys, they just didn't lock down. They just let them go by. A lot of mistakes on the defensive end. Just missed opportunity.
So we have three teams that the Pelicans play with. The Lakers. We had the Lakers game, which they killed. They had the Spurs game, which was a surprising win, even though they almost blew it at the end. And then we had the Cavs game, where they really did blow it at the end. So how good are the Pelicans?
Whew, this is tricky. I really have been trying to figure out.
It's early, so I'm not asking like how you think they'll be at the end of the season. Like, I mean, right about now, how good do you think they are?
They're good. I mean, one of their strengths has been the fact that Ryan Anderson and Omer Sheik are really just a brick wall. And so that alone has got them at least a step up from last year. Teams aren't able to go inside on them anymore and just have a field day because those guys aren't going to let them. Ryan Anderson has come out better than I expected, maybe 2 expectations of what others expected. But the bench is much worse a problem than I think we all thought. It's a huge glaring hole that teams are taking advantage of when their bench unit is on. So really, I had them last year or before the season as like the 9th best team in the West, and I think they're the 9th best team in the West. I'm not sure if I think they're right with the Suns, like neck and neck with them. Oklahoma City's injuries are going to give them a shot if Oklahoma City continues to struggle to make the playoffs. But they've got holes. They've got a lot of glaring things that need to be fixed. That watching them is tough to watch.
Yeah, I've kind of felt the same way. Like, we had those expectations for them going into the season, and they've kind of met those expectations. Like, the offense is about as good as we thought it would be. The defense is a little better than it was last year, but like you mentioned, there's the perimeter defense problems, the bench problems. Just this is a really flawed team, and they're probably better than what I was expecting personally for them to be. Like, they're probably an above-average team. If they were the East, they would be they would look a lot better than they look. But of course, they're playing Western Conference opponents, so that's affecting it as well. So I think they're probably an above-average team, but I'm not sure I'd say they're better than like some of the better teams. I think the Kings, who, even though they had those 2 huge blown losses to the Grizzlies and the Mavericks, I still think they've played better than the Pelicans have so far. I think a lot of Western Conference teams have played better than them, and just like they had that big win. They're doing what they're supposed to do by killing teams like the Lakers. They're beating bad teams. They've beaten the Magic. They've beaten the Lakers. They're not going to lose too many of those games they're not supposed to lose. But when they get and I think they're going to be able to compete against really good teams like the Spurs and the Cavs. But how often they're going to beat them? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if that Spurs win ended up being like one of 3 wins against high-level playoff teams this year.
Yeah, especially against the West. They have a lot of flaws that a lot of the West teams have pretty well covered. A lot of those West teams have shooting guards who can go off if there's nobody guarding them. You used to look at a team like the Clippers. If you're playing a Clippers team really, really tight and Jamal Crawford just decides he's going to shoot the lights out, they don't have anyone who can guard Jamal Crawford, especially with Drew Holiday taking Chris Paul. They've got a lot of flaws the Western Conference playoff teams are going to take full advantage of. They're a really fun team. I'm not sure if they're better than average. They're kind of where I expected them to be. But I think a big reason they've won the games is Anthony Davis. If you take him out of the equation, they might not have won any of those games. And they were relying too much on him early in the season, is my honest opinion. I don't really see anybody else stepping up to the plate. Omer Sheik's doing what you expected of him. Drew Holiday's doing what we kind of expected. Ryan's stepping up, but that's because the bench has nobody else to score the ball. They're meeting what they were expected to do, but nobody other than Anthony Davis is looking to rise to the challenge. And that's kind of an issue when you're trying to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. You don't have your first-round pick, and it's a prime opportunity with Oklahoma City not having its stars where you can make that push and you can finally be in the postseason. It's too many flaws. They got to fix something some way, somehow, or they're not going to make it.
Who do you think has to step up the most? Like,
Whew.
I think personally the guy has to solidify himself as the second best player on the team is Drew Holiday. Like, he's been good, but if they're going to become really good, like the teams that can actually win those games against teams like the Cavaliers and the Spurs on a nightly, like throughout the season, they're going to need someone like Drew Holiday to step up, and perhaps Ryan Anderson too, who really, though, I'm not sure how much more he can step up. He's been amazing this season.
He's been fantastic. He was one of the big reasons that Cavs game was even where it was, because he's made like 5 3-pointers in a row, and the crowd was just like, what is going on? Ryan Anderson was on a tear. It's interesting because when I've watched Drew Holiday, the reaction I've gotten is he's the anti-Kyrie problem. Kyrie Irving drives too much. He doesn't pass the ball enough. I almost feel like Drew passes the ball too much. He's not trying to score. He's almost trying to set up guys like Eric Gordon, Tyreek Evans, Anthony Davis to score the ball. A lot of plays he's been open, and he's passed it to a Sheik to try and get a layup that ends up getting blocked. He's not trying to be the second best player, and I almost feel like he might have to try to be the second best player. If he wants to go on a scoring tear, hey, go ahead and go on a scoring tear. I don't think anyone on that team is going to be mad at you for trying to put up points on a team that's really struggling to put up points.
It's funny, I actually call that the Chris Paul problem, where you spend so much time trying to get your teammates involved, you kind of forget that you yourself can do a lot. Like, Chris Paul, I love watching him, but he has this problem where he'll, like, rather than get his points, he prefers to try and get everyone else involved. It's like, well, that's awesome. That's the traditional point guard way, but it's like, you got to put us some points, man.
Yeah, there was one play specifically last night against the Lakers. Anthony Davis was being guarded by Jordan Hill, and Drew Holiday had Jeremy Lin. And obviously they ran a pick and roll, and it worked perfectly. He had a wide open lane, but yet he decided to pass to Anthony Davis, who was open, don't get me wrong, but Drew had a wide open layup. He had the basket if he wanted it, but he passed to Anthony Davis, and he missed a long jumper. I understand wanting to get Anthony Davis involved, but the rim's open. Go. Who's stopping you? I don't think Anthony Davis is going to be mad if a few times you actually just try to score yourself. He's being too passive on the offensive end. He's trying to get other people involved too much. He needs to try and be the second best player on the team.
I'm actually trying to look it up right now and see. Last time we were on this, the Pelicans had like the second worst efficiency ratings like in the league. They've actually gone up as of late. Probably helps that they aren't playing teams like the Grizzlies anymore.
Yeah, you play the Lakers, that automatically goes up a lot.
Yeah, they've gone from the second worst to a little more middle of the road. It's still early, so this is a little weird. Like, they're right above the Spurs of all teams with a true their effective field goal percentage is 48%. They have a true shooting percentage of 51%. So they're kind of in that middle ground area now around league averageness.
Okay.
Which is better.
It's definitely better. And I think a few players have helped that. Ryan Anderson going off in Cleveland and then repeating and then against Lakers was good. Austin Rivers has actually really done some good things on offense. He's actually played well. He's becoming a player that's not going to dominate a game, but he's a role player. You tell him, just go to the basket. That's all you need to do is go to the basket on the bench. He can do that. He can score. He can pass. That's all they're asking for him, and he's finally at that point where he's not trying to do too much. And so he's doing better than we expected. But there's not enough players on that bench unit doing that to help them out.
One guy that's actually been really good on the bench this year is Austin Rivers.
Yeah, I like him.
It's weird. Like, I feel like after spending all that time wondering if like he really could be what everyone wanted him to be, he kind of looks like he's what everyone wants him to be.
It's weird. I'm usually leading the rants against him, saying, man, he's got to do more, and I'm usually the one that's on board, but I can't say anything. He's doing what he needs to do to help this team win.
Yeah, like his defense isn't anything special, but that's fine right now. I mean, that's the fact that has a true shooting percentage right now of 57%, which is really incredible. His PER is 13.6. He's averaging somewhere around 7 points a game, and he's shooting about 50% from the field all season.
Offensively, he's doing what he expected. You would like him to not get blown by on layups that much, like 5 times a game, but that's going to come in time. Right now, he's worried about his offensive output, and he's completing that. So,
Although I do have to wonder if it has something to do with the fact that he is taking a little less shots right now than he did last season. But even so, like he just looks better.
he looks like he belongs on the floor. He looks like he understands what the offensive plays are and what's going on. And it might seem minor, but that's a big thing when last year it looked like he had no idea what Monty was calling. He had no idea what the play was, and he's just out there just trying to do something. I mean, good for him. I give him credit. Good for him.
All right. I think we should probably get ready to wrap this up soon. Before we do, let's talk about tonight's game against the Timberwolves.
This was going to be a really interesting game. I'm a little less so, prayers up to Thad Young and going through what he's going through. He's not going to play tonight, but this becomes more interesting. He was the guy that was going to guard Anthony Davis. He's the one that's going to have to keep him in check. And without him, who are they going to go to? Dieng to guard him? He can't really keep up with his speed. Then you got a guy like Anthony Bennett. I'm not really sure if he can keep up with him. I love what Bennett's doing this year, but that's tough. They don't have Rubio either. Zach LaVine's going to have to guard Drew Holiday.
I'm going to be blunt. The Pelicans should destroy the Timberwolves. Like, if they don't, it's just the Timberwolves aren't good.
The Timberwolves
are back, but if they don't blow this out, it's going to be a disappointment, honestly.
Absolutely. I think Minnesota played Houston last night, or was it Wednesday? But they have not looked good. They look like they're a team that's kind of in combustion. And if they're playing on a back-to-back on the road versus New Orleans, this should be out of hand very, very early. They're a team that's
not back-to-back. They played Wednesday.
It was Wednesday? Okay. But they're still missing key pieces. New Orleans is a much better cohesive team. The only thing I'm going to say is I'm not sure if Ashtik is going to be physical enough against Pekovic. That's my worry. If there's one thing it's going to be, it's that and Andrew Wiggins. I'm not sure who's going to play Wiggins and hold him down.
Yeah, Wiggins is kind of holding himself down from what I've seen earlier this year. He's still playing really passive, which was something a lot of people criticized him for entering the draft this year. Like, he has all the talent in the world, but he just doesn't seem to know how to use it yet. He's figuring that out, though. With the Pekovic thing, honestly, the way the Wolves play, they might play right into their hand with that, because a lot of what the Wolves like to do is Flip Saunders likes to give it to Pekovic down low and trying to get big men in foul trouble. The problem is Ashik's really good down low, defending the post.
If they're just doing a single post-up, Ashik can handle that. And you run Anthony Davis or on a health defense if you're not really worried about the power forward. And AD could have a big block game once again. The other worry I have is the bench. Minnesota's bench is actually really underrated. You got guys like Corey Brewer. You got guys like Anthony Bennett, Gordy Dieng that can play the game. They're really, really good. And they can go on a run against an Alexei Ajinka-led Pelicans bench unit defensively. That's my other worry. I'm not really worried because I think the offensive output of the starters is going to be good enough to win this game. But if it's close after the first quarter and the bench units come in, that could be rough.
The way the Wolves will actually keep this game close, I don't know why I all of a sudden couldn't talk there. If the Wolves are going to keep it close, it will definitely happen with the bench, because that's probably the only area where they matched New Orleans, because New Orleans' bench is just that bad.
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans doesn't have anybody who can stop anyone on the bench, and they really struggle to score. So if it's that one of those games where Austin Rivers is trying to get to the rim and it's just not working versus Dieng, and Jimmer's trying to take, if they even play Jimmer, he's trying to take shots, or Babbitt, and they're not going in, and everything's just a mess, it could get interesting. I'm a little worried that their bench is not going to do enough in a game where Minnesota's bench could take advantage. It could be the exact opposite, and this could be a 40-point blowout. But
I think it's going to be a blowout no matter what, because I think the Pelicans' starting lineup is just that much better. But even so, I think it's still, it's not out of the realm of crazy to think Minnesota's going to at least make it interesting every once in a while. But for the most part, the Pelicans should win comfortably.
They should win. I hate saying they should win, because it's always bad karma. I mean, whenever I say they should win, they lose. I said my Bengals should beat the Browns last Thursday, and that didn't happen, so I'm a little worried saying should, but I agree. They should win this game.
All right, I think we're about ready to wrap this up. Have any final thoughts?
No, it's a big stretch coming up. They got their first back-to-back Monday and Tuesday, going to Portland. It's going to be a really interesting game, but this is the time. You've got a stretch where there's some teams injured, not playing great. This is the moment you go on a run and try to get yourself a little some distance for the middle of the season.
My final thoughts are that if you haven't yet, you need to go read the Sports Illustrated piece by, I think his name was Chris Ballard. I'm trying to say that correctly.
I think you're right.
He wrote an incredible piece about Ryan Anderson overcoming his now gone girlfriend's suicide. It was a really, really tearjerker of a piece. Just a great read. If you haven't yet, you need to go see that. There's a little bit about Monty Williams that as a person that might make you see him a little bit of a different light.
It's absolutely fantastic piece. I would definitely recommend it.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to the Pelican Debrief podcast. To get your podcast debriefing, make sure to follow Rick Stone here on Twitter at RickStoneNBA or me on Twitter at Chris Barnewall. And make sure to check out the Pelican Debrief website. We have all kinds of great articles for you to read. We will see you again next time.